right, so let's call this meeting to order. It is a little past 8:30. It's March 22, and we have a nice agenda with our clerk here today. So just wanted to open up our meeting for a public comment. Is there anyone here from the public that would like to comment? Please join us up at the front if you'd like to make a comment. All right, seeing none. We have our next item on the agenda, which is the minutes from March 8. I hope you all had an opportunity to review those. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? Is there support? All right, moved by Commissioner LaGrange, support by Commissioner Burrow. Any questions or comments? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Our next item on the agenda is the clerk's office, Register of Deeds, and she has some performance measurements to review. Welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. It's kind of nice to be doing this presentation in person this year and to see your faces. And although Rob can't slip me notes, behind the computer screen like last year, but I'm going to first confess and apologize. 2021 seems to have been a very large blur, almost a huge extension of 2020. So you'll have to forgive me if at some points I kind of merge them, because that's literally how 2021 felt, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. So you do have in your packet a complete review of our performance measurements, but as many of you know, I've kind of taken this opportunity to morph this presentation into more of what I consider an annual report. So just an overview of what I'm going to cover. I'll briefly share how our office is structured, our leadership, and our goals. I'll go through a review on our top line statistics so you get a good feel of what we handle annually and our significant accomplishments over the last year or year-ish. And then I'll finish with a look ahead to this year. Many of you are familiar with the clerk's office, especially as it relates to your interaction dealing with elections, but we do cover a wide variety of important and literally vital functions of government. Vital records, clerk of the 17th Circuit Court, Register of Deeds, and mine is a combined office. Rob McCumber, as you have seen here at the dais during meetings, is my chief deputy county clerk. He was my chief of staff in the legislature, and so he is a transplant from Lansing. And this is a breakdown of each of our offices and the highlights of what we handle. I have to say I'm truly, truly blessed with a tremendous leadership team as well as other management and union staff. I can't emphasize how much I value the people who show up every day in our office and serve the residents, the citizens of Kent County. In addition to Rob handling vital records, we have Jared Uzarski, is our elections director. Many of you have had conversations with him. He is truly one of the most respected elections directors in the state of Michigan and is becoming renowned in the entire industry. And then we have Jerry Chaya, is another, again, very well-respected voice among his peers in Michigan as our Chief Deputy Register. He is a 23-year veteran in the Register's office. So he knows a thing or two because he's seen a thing or two. Amy Doring is our Chief Deputy in the Circuit Court. It's a very busy office. She does a great job of balancing the autonomous clerk's office in a role that truly functions in many ways within the court structure. And then finally, as you know, Kim Perry, our senior administrative assistant, retired at the end of last year. So we do have a vacancy in that position, and we're kind of looking at it to see what ideas we might have for restructuring that position to meet our needs moving forward. And then again, as I mentioned before, we have an amazing group of management and union staff members that serve people in Kent County. Those employees are represented by the UAW and the TPOAM. These are the strategic goals for our office. They're not fluffy. They essentially just say that what we will do is the work that we're statutorily mandated to perform, and that we'll perform it, those duties well and within the time frame mandated and with the laws, that the parameters within the law. So it's important to note that almost every single service that the clerk register's office we do is statutory. This is not an office that, for better or for worse, honestly, depending on the day, provides a plethora of discretionary services. It's about as limited government as you can get. The next few slides we'll go through are just kind of designed to give you an idea of the volume of work that we handle. So for vital records, the number of new records filed in 2021 compared to the last 2 years. You'll notice that births are declining for the second year in a row in Kent County. Marriages in 2021 declined during the pandemic in 2020. We had executive orders that prohibited people from gathering and such, but you'll notice that in 2021, that kind of started to normalize again. We have had a slight decline in CPLs from the massive increase that we saw in 2020. See, if you look at 2019, then 2020, you'll see that huge influx there. And so we continue to maintain that higher than normal in CPLs, but you know, I think the election year of 2020 kind of peaked that, and we'll always see a slight decline in non-election years. In addition to those number of new records, we also processed over 75,000 requests for copies, and that's a large increase over the last year, and that can be attributed to people needing new records for a variety of different activities following the pandemic. Changing schools, buying and refinancing homes, that was a big one, getting married, and then just copies of vital records. For elections, most voters, when they think about elections, and I've said this over and over, they think, okay, every even year, August, but especially November, it's an election year. Well, in our world, every year is an election year, and in Kent County, we have at least 3 elections every year, and 4 in presidential years generally, or for example, this year, because we have a special election, we have 4 elections. So in 2021, we held 3 elections. We had a small school election in May. In August, we had the Senate special primary and some municipal and local questions on the ballot. And the same in November. We had the special general and some municipal and local questions there. I want you just kind of take note of the absentee rate. Again, some of this is related to pandemic. Some of this is related to post-proposal 3 provisions that allow for no reason absentee voting. We have gone over the last several cycles from 25 to 30% of our voters casting absentee ballots to 67, 70, all the way up to 78%. It'll be interesting this election year to see, as we've come out of the pandemic, or at least I think we've come out of the pandemic as of right now, to see if that ticks down or if this trend is going to stay at such a high rate. I'm not certain that we'll ever see absentee voting go below 50% because of no reason absentee voting, but it will be interesting to see if we maintain that high of a rate. So for the Register of Deeds office, 2021 nearly beat out our all-time high for property documents recorded. So you'll notice in 2006, that was the high water mark at 140,065 documents recorded, and we just came in under that in 2021 with 139,726 records. And the increase in volume truly is a product of the real estate market. There was low interest rates, which created a whole lot of refinancing we'd seen. Additionally, there were a lot of programs that allowed individuals to have mortgage modifications and programs aimed at keeping people in their homes during the pandemic. And that just kind of created new filings that are just out of the ordinary, generally speaking. We've historically always hit our goals as to how quickly we've recorded our documents. Statutorily, we're required to do so within 5 days, and it's never been an issue with our office in probably almost 20 years, I think. But in 2020 and probably about the first quarter of 2021, due to COVID staffing modifications we made in our office to ensure health and safety of our staff, and then combined with that increased volume of documents that needed to be recording, it kind of created this perfect storm for a backlog. And I did talk a little bit about that in our presentation last year, but I am proud to say that, again, our team remedied that as of March 31st last year, and from that point forward, we continue to record all of our documents within that 5 days. Something also very interesting to note too is that all of our records are digitized. When over the last several years, we kind of made it a priority to make sure that for the public to have ease of document searches and things like that, we wanted to go back through history to be able to make sure all of those records are available digitally, and that has been the case now. Also, we've seen a huge increase in electronic recording. When I first took office, I think we were about 50-60% e-record. In 2017, we're now up to 80% of all of our documents come in e-recorded versus individuals mailing them or title companies mailing them or hand delivering them. I'm sure the pandemic had a lot to do with that, but we'll continue to see if that rate holds. Our court office. So this slide gives you a picture of the number of case files that the court opens, that we open in the court annually. And then on top of that, the number of documents that we file in each of those cases. They're enormous figures and they speak to a truly busy office. So as you can see in 2020, there was a dip in cases and filings, for obvious reasons. But now back to 2021, things got much healthier and we've gotten back to our litigious selves again. So you'll see these records just kind of stabilize. You'll notice 2018, 2019 kind of hit a high water mark there. We attribute that to Wolverine suits and such. Moving on to our significant accomplishments from 2021. In our elections office, we not only managed 3 elections that were larger than normal in the odd year because of the Senate specials, but we implemented, and this has been a long time coming, we implemented our electronic filing of campaign finance reports. So previously, when I first took office, campaign committees would come in or mail in their hard copy paper reports, and then we would have to scan it in order to make them available online. When we took office, we began the pursuit of implementing an online reporting system, but in the interim, we were allowed, I joke, we stepped into the 90s and allowed people to email their reports. So we would receive them electronically, but truly not in a functional fashion. So now committees can generate their reports online, and it truly does save many hours on the user end, on their end. And it also enables the report to be uploaded to the web immediately for the public once we've accepted the report. Also, and this is a plug for any campaigns that may still be hesitant to use the new system, The error and omission rate is cut substantially for those who e-file because the program is really great at alerting the users to any errors prior to submission. And I know Commissioner Skaggs, you're walking in right at the perfect time. We're talking about the online campaign finance reporting. So the ability, our new system that allows for electronic filing of campaign finance reports. And we've had many discussions about that. And then additionally in elections, we piloted a ride-along program with legislators and county commissioners, and I know some of you attended that, to help educate leaders and policymakers on how we ensure secure, transparent, and accurate elections at every step of the process, from programming the equipment and the ballots to election night and day, and then through the canvass, recounts, and audits. It was a really informative series. It wasn't just a one-stop shop one day. We took people through the entire process, and we think they got a lot out of it. We'd like to expand this program to the public to help combat misinformation, disinformation, and just educate our voters how their elections work, and ultimately to make ambassadors out of them for our elections. The challenge, however, is making sure, because it is very intensive, time-consuming, labor-intensive, the challenge is making sure we have enough voters to care about and spend the time learning about the process. Maybe before a candidate loses and there's concerns, or even after a candidate loses and there's concerns. So we've had a lot of leaders come in and express interest, and we've been able to provide that. And when we do have members of the public come in and go through our process, we haven't done the ride-along, but we, again, very, very transparent and encourage people to come and watch the process as it's actually unfolding. And when they do, we see a lot of fruits of that labor. So we'll continue to do that, even if we aren't able to implement the full ride-along for the public. Finally, and I want to nerd out a little bit and spend a few minutes on this. In the court office, we continue to make gains regarding a huge issue in a busy court system like ours, and that's space to store our files. So these are the files at our archives facility that the county shares with the city of Grand Rapids and the Grand Rapids Public Museum. And if you haven't had a chance to tour the archive facility, do let me know and we'll make that happen. The collection of historical artifacts, the documents that the museum has and the city has, and that we have, it's extraordinary. And this photo here shows 1/2 of one row of files. We have dozens of rows of files. Each year's file, this is for courts, each year's file folder is a different color. So in these photos, you can see kind of an idea of the massive space that each year requires. So blue is one year, yellow is another, and it's not done by pretty. One of the first things I learned when I took office was I don't get to pick the file colors, and that is truly an issue. The judges are very interested in the file colors for a multitude of reasons, but those colors are actually determined by SCAO. So yeah, I hope they make good decisions because color matters. And we have over 30 years of files. And we store files in 3 locations currently. Our first location is on the 2nd floor of the courthouse in our office. And that's kind of the current files. It's 2009 through current juvenile guardianship cases. We also store files, again, 2021, we store files on the 5th floor of the courthouse. That was 2006 through 2009. And then we have our archives facility where 2005 and older files go. This picture is about 1/3 of the clerk's space at the archive center, and it shows our files and boxes prior to the acquisition of new shelving. So Rob and Amy have lots of meetings about shelves. with the price of steel being so high and supply shortages, acquiring affordable shelving really was a challenge. We had a lot of help from Al and his amazing facilities team to help locate used and fairly priced shelving to help meet our needs. So we spent a lot of time in 2021 reorganizing our space at the archives because the court administration is reclaiming the storage space on the 5th floor that we've been using to store our files, because they truly do need that space for office space. Like I said, this photo is old because the area is now built up with our new shelves, but it does just show the expansive nature of the files that we maintain. So like all government entities, we have a retention and purging schedule per statute. We're currently working on revamping the purge process for criminal files. So purging a file occurs 30 years after the case is initiated, and it's quite a tedious process. It takes a lot of time and a lot of attention to detail. In recent years, it's something that really kind of got pushed by the wayside for a multitude of reasons. But we are being very diligent about making sure that we are complying with our retention and purging schedule. So even though we purge a file, we have to retain certain documents from it, like the final judgment and any court orders get retained. So you can't just take a file, throw it in the incinerator or shredder or whatever, because we have to keep those records for 100 years. So they all have to be inspected and reviewed and gone through before any purge. So before we even can do the purge, the state of Michigan Archives had the right to claim any file of interest to them. So let's just say they don't move very quickly, or they hadn't moved very quickly. So we were waiting on them for over a year to be able to move our process along. But once that happens, we obtain a court order for the purging, and then the file is destroyed. So with purging back on track, the first round of records from 1980 to 1982 are scheduled to be purged here shortly. The boxes in this picture are just kind of they just show what we do to prepare the documents for purging. So like I said, the court office is busy. It's a heavy lift, literally, and they just do amazing work to keep the justice system moving along. So looking ahead, we're currently in year 5 of our 10-year contract with election software and equipment that we purchased in 2017 with state grants, and there was no cost to the county for 5 years. So in years 6 through 10, in years 6 through 10, the county will incur costs relative to the software maintenance of our system. And at some point, in the next 5-10 years or so, I do believe not just Kent County, but I do believe that equipment statewide that was purchased in 2017 will begin to become obsolete, or we'll need to purchase new equipment again. And I don't know that there's any guarantee that we'll have state funding or the federal HAVA funds that we had this last round to be able to purchase that equipment. So I'm truly encouraging counties throughout the state to just start keeping that on your mind, preparing for these expenses, because running our elections costs a lot of money, and it's a very important investment. So the same for our court office. There's ongoing discussion of the cost of maintaining Michigan's court files, or maintaining Michigan's courts, and this office is only getting busier. Technology is changing, and at some point, we'll be implementing e-filing solutions, either statewide through SCAO or maybe even on our own, and that does require significant funding. Staffing level and space needs in our courthouse for our staff is a continual concern as the courts get busier, potential judges added down the line, and our favorite thing, election misinformation, disinformation concerns. We continue to combat questions, concern in very creative ways, like the Ride Along to better educate the public and our leaders. And like I said, when people make the effort when they meet us to learn, it does make a big difference, and it's encouraging to see that. So with 2022 being in the public eye, bigger election with the governor's race and all the statewide races, redistricting, there's just a whole lot more interest in this even year than there is in the odd year. We'll be prepared to continue that education and that outreach and promote the transparency in this office for our elections. I do want to mention in 2020, before the elections occurred, because we had so many changes. It was the first statewide election with post-proposal 3 provisions. It was the pandemic. We were able to secure COVID funds to do education and PR effort to the public, and that was very, very beneficial. But unfortunately, I'm not certain that we will have the luxury of using those types of funds for this purpose. So we'll just continue to do what we can with what we have to ensure the public is educated about our elections. So kind of in conclusion, I just want to thank you again for the interest and the support that this board, this committee has, and the county administration and staff, legal. Linda hates when I call because she knows what's coming. But we are an autonomous office, yet we are partners in this county, and I truly feel that we set a model for partnerships that other counties just simply aren't blessed with. So I'm very grateful to work with all of you. And I just want to encourage you and any of your friends, family, follow us on social media, because we try to keep our social media updated as much as possible. So thank you very much for your time. And if the chair pleases, I will take any questions.
Absolutely. Thank you for your presentation today and all the information. And are there any questions from commissioners? Commissioner Cullman.
Thank you, Chair. I think back probably 2 decades ago now, I read this report. I think maybe the United Nations did it or something with economies around the world, and one of the main factors correlated to like a successful economy and society was good property records. Another was a well-functioning judicial system. I'll throw in, elections and how important those are to our society, and it becomes clear that it's not hyperbole to say that the success of our society really goes through the clerk's office, and I just want to say thanks for doing an extraordinary job here in Kent County.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I like to tell people that, it's just not sexy, but it is so critical, and we interact with people at every major milestone, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So I really appreciate that acknowledgement.
All right, Commissioner Skaggs.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of things, Lisa. One, man, those photos of the archives, that takes me back to the time in academia. It's fun to look at. Let me just say that your system seems a lot better than provincial Russia in the early 1990s. So, congratulations. Low hurdle, but things look good. It also reminds me. I saw something online the other day. Asked Americans what they thought in popular culture was the best representation of government in politics. And 51% of people said it was West Wing, the TV show, and 17% of people thought it was Veep.
We're kind of like a perfect combination.
I think I just listening about the discussions about shelving and especially about file color takes me back to the episode about ice cream flavors at the small business. But it's you gotta love it. On a more serious note, thank you to you and your entire team. And I guess it's too bad that this has to be said, but thank you for all that you're doing to educate the public about the role of the clerk in elections. and for standing up against some of the misinformation that's out there about the security of our elections, the fairness of our elections, and the integrity of the counts. And I think that's extremely important. And honestly, I think it's extremely important that it comes from Kent County and that it comes from you. And I want to thank you and your team for that. So I get the sense, maybe reading between the lines. My only question was, what do you need? What do you need from us? I think there's a little bit of an answer in there. And although we're not the finance committee, I think there is a county administrator that also sits in on those meetings and has something to do with the budget. I think our director is here as well. That it sounds to me like the clerk has some concerns about not getting federal funding for upgrades when they come. I think that the county has done a fabulous job in its capital account for buildings. And maybe it makes sense for us to start saving now for these anticipated costs that the clerk might have. And if we get fortunate and the feds decide to give us some money for this, then we can find some other good uses for that. But we do not, as I think Commissioner Coleman said, we do not want to be in a circumstance where we're dealing with old equipment or equipment that maybe the public, rightly or wrongly, is concerned about security and integrity, and that we need to be able to move quickly as a county if we when the time comes to replace that equipment. So maybe some sort of, maybe adding that into something that we are intentionally saving for long term. Putting away a few pennies makes a lot of sense instead of just scrambling at the end. And I think that's generally the Kent County way, so this might make sense to be something that we're doing.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So there's always been, even back when I was in the legislature, an effort to allow the governmental entities who serve as the filing officials for candidates to keep the $100 filing fee that some candidates are able to pay for access to the ballot. And it's, not all candidates are able to utilize the filing fee, but there's always kind of been this effort to eliminate the ability to refund those filing fees. So the winners of these elections, or the winners of the nomination, or first and second place, will get that filing fee refunded. We kind of held off until I got into this office and we were starting to go through this acquisition of our new equipment. And I kind of wanted to show a good faith that we acknowledge that we need to invest in our election equipment. And so we took that idea and kind of tacked on for the, okay, so we don't reimburse this filing fees, which I wasn't supportive in the past. I felt like we should maintain the current policy. But if we were to go down that road of not refunding these filing fees, let's use it specifically for the purpose of maintaining and purchasing election equipment. So it's just kind of like this, because the opponents were, the concern was, well, then it just kind of becomes this slush fund for general government, which I can appreciate, but if it's strictly narrowly defined, and I just really think it's a good faith show that we acknowledge we need to invest in that equipment. We need to just keep that on the forefront. I mean, it's a drop in the bucket, truly, especially because not all filing fees come to our office. They'll go to local jurisdictions as well for those local candidates, things like that. But it was just a sign of good faith, and I think I think that was very well received. Did that pass? I believe the governor actually signed that.
All right. Commissioner LeGrand.
Chair, first of all, I want to thank you for the ride-along, the whole idea of it, and I was really happy to participate, and I want to thank you and Jared Uzarski for the fantastic job that you did with that. Will you be offering another one prior to the election for elected officials throughout the county? I think that would be a great idea. That's, I guess, one question. Another question is, if we do have people who have concerns and we direct them to you, what do you have that you can, I know you can't do it right along for every member of the public, but what do you offer a random member of the public who has concerns?
So the answer to your question for if you want to come and do a ride-along again, I'm going to say yes, but I'm going to qualify that with making sure we have the bandwidth to do it. Short of that, and again, I envision and want to so badly do this ride-along, like this open house for the public. But it is, as you know, it's a time commitment. You don't just show up for an hour and walk out an elections expert, because there's just so many different stages. And Commissioner Coleman, you were there as well. But short of that, we just will encourage, people call, we have concerns, Jared or myself or Rob, we invite them to come and watch. So I appreciate Commissioner Skaggs, your comments and your compliments toward us for promoting the security of elections and how we do things in Kent County. But I also I say, don't just take my word for it. Trust me, but verify. You have the opportunity to verify that. So we want people to come in, and they do, and we will spend a lot of time. They'll see the canvassers at work. We spend a lot of time showing them, displaying them the tapes. So it's literally not hands-on, but it's all eyes on the materials. It's a tutorial. And we really appreciate that and like that. We don't get a lot, but we do get some. And so we just keep, short of being able to have that structured, scheduled thing, we always encourage, open the doors, roll out the red carpet for the actual process. So the ride-along is almost a simulation, right? If you come to the pre-election accuracy tests at the locals, if you come to the canvas, they don't do this often, but if you especially because results come through, are shown on the internet, but if you come hang out at the office, if you come to the canvas, if you come to the audits, if there's a recount, you can watch it happen as, the real thing. So we don't have anything structured or a program in place at this time. Because we think the best program is the actual program to watch. But ideally, we would just love to have this ride-along open house. We just have to kind of, we have to have the bandwidth to be able to do it among our staff and the interest to make it worthwhile.
So if we want to share things,
Send them to us.
Is following you on Facebook or Instagram.
Yeah.
You will have shareable
Facebook,
election.
Twitter, they can come. Jared has spent hours with just a random member of the public in the office, just walking people through. I spent hours on the phone. We want to make a believer however we can.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Commissioner Burrow.
Yes, thank you, Lisa. I appreciate it. I've had the privilege of being on council at Wyoming, seeing Kelly Vandenberg and her staff work with your staff. And after elected here a couple years ago, I was able to see the audit process going on here at Kent County. So you're exactly right. We're the folks that people can talk to, and we can lead in the right direction and let them know that we've seen firsthand on how well things here operate in Kent County. So again, really appreciate that process and the work with all of our local clerks. They all have some good things to say about you and your staff as well.
Thank you.
And then, I don't know if I've had the privilege with your office, it seems like I'm able to touch just about every aspect of what your office does, except the courts, thank goodness, and hopefully that'll stay that way. And again, in my real estate business, the e-recording and the process and the speed of that is so important, and the instrument numbers getting turned around so quickly. It's an important part of our economy here in West Michigan and Kent County. And we appreciate your leadership and your staff's leadership in that area. And again, the elections as well. I'm not sure if I'm the only one, but it seems like occasionally there's a little hiccup on a campaign financing or something, and again, your staff's always really quick to point that out, hey, you need to make this correction, and of course, the e-filing after, or the e-recording and reporting after you get past maybe the first one, you're like, all right, this is good, right? I'm used to this. So again, I think we all appreciate that, and it makes it easier for us and your staff and the community to see what we're up to.
Thank
So,
you very much, and I would be remiss if I didn't, I appreciate the acknowledgement of how critical the role that we play in our economy and in our, the functioning of our republic, and it was, I can't say it enough how awesome our staff is and the dedication they showed, especially during the pandemic. We had to be here. We had to serve. There were major functions, financial, economic, elections, judicial, justice, all kinds of reasons why we had to continue to stay open, and we did everything we could to best serve our residents and keep our employees healthy, and they just did so great.
So I guess one more question, I'm just kind of curious. So with all these documents, like moving forward and the cost of either putting them on, putting them out there in cyberspace, or it seems like a daunting task, right? Where it seems like it's a lot of workforce power. How do we eventually get away from all this paper? And I struggle with that
It's
myself.
the golden question, right? I'm not, unless there's wholesale overhaul, reform, I don't know that we'll ever be able to be paperless. I know the prosecutor's office is paperless, but with what is required of us and what we maintain, I mean, do you foresee any paperless?
At some point, we'll have a
Digital, yes.
line in the sand. We'll draw a line in the sand, right? And it will be paperless moving forward, but it's hard because for a very long time, for several years, if not decades, we'll have some paper and some online, some digitization of the records, and that's hard to combine those two for every need, for a judge, for a referee, for a judicial clerk. So it'll be a while, and hopefully soon the state will have some money to help us.
Well, and to add to that too, going paperless is different than digitizing, right? So if at some point we even go paperless, it doesn't erase the paper that we do have, and that is a massive undertaking, which we experienced through the Register of Deeds office. So you think, oh, magically you're paperless now, so we don't need these so much staff, but you have this 150, 200 years of paper that eventually will have to get digitized, and then again the whole dealing with reforming the retention and all that stuff, but it will be a massive undertaking. And then once we do go paperless, there's always going to, particularly in the courts, and we see this with e-recording in the deeds, there always has to be somebody on the back end to review it, to index it, and make sure it gets where it goes. So it's efficient, it's effective, but it's definitely a huge. It's not as simple as it sounds, right? And so we love it, but we know what that means and what it'll take to get there.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Yeah, Commissioner Coleman.
Just for the record, I'd like to make it clear that Commissioner Burrow is the only one that has problems with his campaign finance reports.
I don't know, have you done a search? Truly, thank you very much for your time and all your support. I appreciate it.
Thank you for
Thanks.
your leadership, and I appreciate your staff and all that you guys do. Thanks for the
Awesome.
time.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You are welcome. All right, our next item on the agenda is the request for the Veterans Millage. Al, could you read the action request, please?
Action requested, recommend to the Board of Commissioners to adopt a resolution authorizing that a proposition be placed on the August 2, 2022 primary election ballot for the purpose of a millage for services to veterans. Voters first approved the first dedicated millage for services to veterans as .050 mils in 2014 with an expiration on December 31, 2021. A request was submitted by the United Veterans Council of Kent County for an 8-year dedicated .050 mil levy, and that went from and that will go from 2022 through 2029 to generate revenue to provide services for veterans of United States military service and their dependents. The proposed millage of .050 mils would cost a homeowner $5 annually per 100,000 of taxable value. The Veterans Millage Subcommittee of the Board, and that included Subcommittee Chair Commissioner Burrow, Commissioners Sparks and Ponstein, reviewed the proposition and recommend that it be placed on the August 2, 2022 primary election ballot. According to U.S. Veterans Administration data, 32,764 veterans reside in Kent County, which is the fourth largest Michigan county veteran population. 51 of Michigan's 83 counties posted a millage dedicated to veterans in 2020. The millage rates levied range up to .4993. 13 counties levied .050 mils or less, and 38 counties levied 0.06 mil or more. The Finance and Physical Resources Committee approved the action request at their 3/15/22 meeting. It is within the discretion of the Board of Commissioners whether to submit the proposal to the electors who reside within Kent County. Corporate Council will review and approve the veteran millage ballot language as to form.
All right, thank you, Al. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Burrow. Support by Commissioner McLeod. All right, so any questions or comments on this motion? Commissioner Burrow?
Yes, I had the privilege of chairing this committee, and it was a great committee to chair, great turnout, a lot of discussion. I'd like to thank Jenny James as well. She really helped me out with organization and keeping the meetings going forward, and we kept them kind of short on time, and we're definitely respectful, I think, of folks' time. Again, great discussions, and we really appreciate the veterans and their group coming out and really having some meaningful conversation. Again, also like to thank Commissioner Sparks and Ponstein on their involvement as well. So again, I appreciate this, and that was a great group and a privilege to share it. Thank you.
Thanks for your work on that, Commissioner Burrow. Any other questions or comments on the veterans millage? All right, seeing none, this has already been through our Finance Committee. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you. All right, next we have Commissioner Miscellaneous. Is there any Commissioner Miscellaneous at all? Any comments or thoughts you have to share with us today? Wow, quiet bunch. All right, well, I will adjourn our meeting then. I have nothing else to add. Did you have anything else to add, Al?
Not today.
No?
Thank you.
All right, we have a couple commissioners that are out at the MAC conference today too. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.